This is the Crowdcrux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Briggman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. What up, crowdfunders? Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman, and today we are talking about board games, and specifically how you can raise money for a board game using Kickstarter, using Indiegogo, how you can actually create one of these board games, put it into the world, get a bunch of players, and in that way build an entirely new brand off of Kickstarter. I'm actually talking with the same team that I had on in episode 197, a crowdfunding veteran reveals a Kickstarter pricing secret. So in episode 197, I talked with Sandy Peterson. So Sandy Peterson is behind Peterson Games. He's the founder, and he's created a bunch of different projects on Kickstarter. I think it's around like 20 or 21 at this point in time. So we talked back then, a lot of great information, particularly if you're into board games. I totally recommend go and check out 197 of this podcast. But also this episode, I talked with Arthur Peterson. So Arthur Peterson is the production manager at Peterson Games. So he's actually the one who's doing all the little nitty gritty stuff, like actually putting together the timeline, coordinating everything, making sure that everything is running smoothly. He's really the organized one, the playing, I guess, the parents in that, the parent figure, like having to have everything in line and so that the production goes smoothly. And he came on the show to share with you what a actual timeline looks like when it comes to producing an entirely new board game. He also shares things like what you might not know about the things that go into stretch goals, things that go into add-ons. How is it that you're able to create a game from a concept and actually make that something that's fun, that's playable, that people are going to love? And how this team was able to create an entirely new board game brand from scratch and do this off of Kickstarter. So lots of valuable information here today, particularly if you want to get a sense of the behind the scenes, what happened behind the scenes of a board game that's been successful on Kickstarter. Today, you're going to hear exactly about that. So I hope that you like it. The other quick announcement that I have for you, if you are listening to this show and you want to gain more education, knowledge, information, training videos, techniques, strategies, all that kind of stuff when it comes to Kickstarter, I released a new course on Udemy, a really affordable course with this link that I'm going to give you. And basically it's going to go through the step-by-step process to starting, marketing, managing a Kickstarter campaign, everything that goes into that, all that kind of stuff, and also some private training videos that I haven't shared anywhere else that go into the mechanisms as to why someone actually backs a project on Kickstarter and how to sort of pull those strings or how to trigger those things so that people will actually become a backer of your Kickstarter campaign. I also have other stuff there like downloadable MP3s so you can actually listen to the episodes as you're going. You don't have to just be on Udemy watching the course. So this is the Kickstarter launch formula on Udemy, and the link to that, which will give you 90% off with this exclusive beginning promotion, is crowdcrux.com/Udemy promo. That is crowdcrux.com/Udemy promo. So that link will unlock this discount for you. You can get started. You can start learning. And also, if you want to work with me, there's a way to do that through that course, that insider course. So I hope that you enjoy that. And I also hope that you like today's podcast episode. It is coming up right after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. On episode 197, we had on Sandy Peterson, where he revealed a ton of incredible tips when it comes to board game funding, some of the stuff that you need to know if you want to actually raise money for a board game. And today we're talking with Arthur Peterson, who is the production manager at this company. And he really has sort of the nitty gritty details when it comes to what actually goes into a game. You know, we're looking at his recent project that's raised over $180,000, incredible, off of a $10,000 goal, which I'll let him tell you a little bit more about. But we really want to get into what's happening behind the scenes. Arthur, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Can you give the listeners a bite-sized idea of this new game that you're currently funding right now, who it's for, what it's about?
Sure. So it's actually not its own new game. What it is it's called, usually called a source book or a supplement. It is a role-playing supplement that you use when playing with the famous Dungeons and Dragons role-playing system. So if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you can use our book as kind of additional material, additional rules and monsters to fight, stuff like that. It's a resource, in other words.
Okay, so kind of like an expansion to the original D&D.
Exactly, kind of like an expansion. That's right.
Cool. And so this project, I think you guys are at like 21 now that you funded on Kickstarter?
21 projects?
Mm-hmm. I think so, right?
Yeah, it could be. I honestly don't know. I'd have to look up the count. It's been many. It's been over a dozen, that's for sure.
It's insane to me. Like, you've been able to build a business around this, launching projects. I mean, this recent one has over 3,000 backers. It's insane, man.
Thanks. Yeah, it is. And we couldn't be more pleased. It's a great time that we look at Kickstarter as, you know, it's an innovation in the market space, right? It's allowing creators and businesses who in the olden days would have had to either save up capital, go to a bank and get a loan, use some kind of other investment strategy. But now you can just go directly to people who might want your product. Say, totally. Hey, I will fund you right here. I'll give you money so you can make this a reality. It's great.
Exactly. How would you say that, you know, I think every great piece of art, every great business, every great product is made by teams of people. How would you say that your skill set differs from Sandy's? You know, you have a very particular set of skills. How would you say yours differs from, what do you bring to the team?
Well, it's very different. I mean, so Sandy is he's a gaming titan. He's a legend, and he's had so many.
The man to legend.
Yeah, for sure. And I bring not only something different, but just very different. My background actually is I was an English high school teacher. So my background has nothing to do with what I do in my day job now. I graduated from University of North Texas with an English degree, believe it or not, once upon a time. So, when I was brought onto the team, though, what they needed most was someone to just oversee the physical process of making the game, because they didn't have Sandy's a visionary in terms of, you know, the game design and what's the game going to look like and be about, and we have artists who, you know, do the art and all of that, but they didn't have someone who could put it together. So pretty much a month after I was hired in mid 2014, I flew to China to visit the factory that would be actually making the game and kind of assess things there. And a lot of it I just had to learn as I go, if you will. So
you're basically doing the adult supervision here, like all of the
right, exactly. I have kind of a part of my hand is in just like managing the whole team and making sure they're all on schedule and doing what they're supposed to be doing and hitting their deadlines. So kind of a manager, and the other half is working with China to get the physical product here and in people's hands.
Well, there's a lot that actually goes into the creation of a game. I think a lot of the times we see a Kickstarter campaign and it looks like a fully finished product, but there's actually a lot of steps that go into making that happen. So I'd love it if you could just sort of talk with the listeners a little bit about, you know, the timeline that you guys have as a company for a completely new game. Like, what does that timeline look like? I imagine initially it starts with like a brainstorming session. What goes on from that point?
Sure. I can give you the full timeline. So if you don't mind, I'll use actually not the current Kickstarter, but our next Kickstarter we're launching in January. And I use that only because this, like I said, this one's a book. And so I kind of had a different structure. But January, we're launching a full board game with miniatures and the whole setup. So that'll be a more complete example. So it starts with Sandy, of course, because he's the chief creative officer. He's the designer. So he has the idea and he says, okay, here's the game. Here's what I want to do. And we'll discuss it because part of it is we want to make sure it's something that people will want. He is a great designer, but we got to make sure it's marketable, right? It's something that's going to be people will want to buy.
Yeah,
exactly. We need to see if it has demand, and it usually does. But in this case, Hyperspace, it's a strategy game set in space. And so he said, hey, I want it to be you play as an alien, you have spaceships, you move around the board and you fight each other, roll dice. It's kind of one of those games. So we had this idea. So there's kind of two tracks. Once that happens, there's two tracks that begin. There's the art track and the design track. So of course he has to actually take the idea and turn it into a fully designed game. Mm-hmm. And he does that over many months, and this is part of the timeline where a lot of things are unknown. And so at this point in time, and for Hyperspace, this would have happened over 18 months ago. We don't know when it's going to go to Kickstarter. We don't know when it's going to be ready. And keep in mind, we have multiple games going on at once where this is the case. So this is just one one timeline, right? One game. So so basically, he'll be working on it, and he'll develop it. It'll probably take him a few weeks to develop it to a point where he can put it in front of playtesters. So we have in-house playtesters, as in people in the company, as well as Sandy's home Saturday night gaming group, his friends that he's had for decades. They'll come over and play the game. We also have outside playtesters that we use both on Discord. We have a channel of people, a private channel where people can get the rules and play the game. There's no art. It's just, here's the rules. You have to print out your own cards, just put them on, write this out and put it on a card, like a deck of cards or something, and use your own dice. All of it's just homemade with these playtesters. And that goes on for several months as he hones it. And when he gets feedback, he changes the rules. He rewrites the rule book, all of this. It takes place, like I said, many months. It could be 6 months. It could be a year. Now, while that's happening, he starts to say, okay, the game, whatever iteration of the rules are, there's going to be these needs for the game. Like one of the easy ones to say is, well, there's going to be a box art, right? I know the theme, so we can get a box art. We can get marketing art like that. I know it's going to have these types of cards in it, combat cards or something. Mm-hmm. So the artist will start laying out, okay, what is a combat card going to look like? He'll say, okay, this game has these kinds of monsters. So they'll start drawing the monsters. So we'll create an art list of all the art that's needed based on the design. And this usually happens a month or two after the design is complete. Or it's not complete, but started. So we have an idea. And then the art track will usually could take 6 months, 8 months. It depends on the type of game. And for a game that has miniatures, there's kind of a separate track of timeline, which is for the physical sculptures. Mm-hmm. So a little plastic toy, a little plastic miniature that you get in a game box or on a store shelf, that first has to be concepted, which is a black and white, two-dimensional piece of art that is then given to the 3D sculptor, who will look at it and basically, and usually it's a front and back, maybe all four sides, so the sculptor has a good idea. Then we have freelance digital sculptors who will just sculpt it for us, right? And that takes a while. So for Hyperspace, to give you an idea, we fall of 2017, we had the full art list and we had the full concepts by the end of 2017. And that's when we started the sculpting. We started sculpting in January or February, I think. And we finished May or maybe mid-June. And so it took about 6 months to sculpt, and that game has dozens and dozens of sculpts. So we just it's a timeline. We just set it up and figure out who's the best sculptor for which. We have a stable of sculptors we use, and some are good at hard surface detail, like a spaceship. Some are good at organic stuff. They might be good for like an alien. And that's kind of part of my job. I just source out which is going to be a good sculpt for a sculptor, So again, that process might take 6 months. And this is at this stage in the timeline, Sandy's honing the final text, the final copy. Everything is getting together where it's going to be, it's the final product.
That's incredible, man. That's so much detail.
Oh, it's tons of stuff. Yeah. And there's a lot of back and forth with the playtest. And sometimes we make art changes based on playtest. Because at a certain point, the playtesters start getting prototypes that are physical, that are with art on them, right? And so it's like early prototype with art. And then once you're at that stage, we're able to basically decide when we want to kickstart it, because we're close enough that we have final art we can use for marketing. We can start saying, okay, not everything's done, but it will be done within 3 months. So let's set the Kickstarter date and so forth. And this one happened to be January. And so we have, in fact, this is a Kickstarter first for us. We decided to make 55 prototype sets with the final art in China. So I actually have the plastic figures with me, actually.
Oh, neat.
Right here. Yeah.
Is that to send out to people to try, or?
Yeah. So what we're going to do, what we've decided is, this is like I said, this is a first. Let me turn on my camera real quick. I know your listeners probably can't see, but I'll show you. We have, I basically got 55 sets of these prototypes so that we can send them to our 40 or 50 best playtesters, basically. Wow. And people who've signed up for them. So here's like an early figure.
Very cool.
You can see right there. Yeah, so there's little plastic toys. Here's a spaceship. Right?
Nice, awesome, man.
Yeah. So I got these 55 sets, which were expensive because normally we make, one thing about manufacturing in China, of course, is that the more you make, the cheaper your per unit costs. So we always want to have a lot of customers so we can make a big print run, have each unit be cheaper. These were expensive to make, but again, we're using them as a marketing tool this time. So this is kind of our first time to do this. We're kind of growing our process, if you will.
So your role basically, I mean, that's an incredible level of detail. Also, all the play testing that you do, I think that shows when someone actually then sits down, they can play the game. They're guaranteed to have a good experience, or at least it's been vetted. I think that says a lot about your brand. I think it says a lot about the dedication you guys have to detail and just how you want to put out a good product that's obviously been tested. It surprises me too, the level of, I wouldn't say like, how amateur, but like you literally are getting started with a game that isn't fully created yet. And like anyone, if they wanted to in the audience, they could try to put together their own little game using, cards for, just note cards even for that. And then getting a sense of how it will play. It's a very like easy prototype you put together there.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And for sure, we did a Kickstarter last, January called Planet Apocalypse. It had demons you would fight. It was a co-op game where all the players are heroes fighting the demons. And we put on that the full, I believe. Yeah, we put the rule book. I know. I'm pretty sure we put a prototype where you could download a print and play. That's what it's called. We had a print and play where you could download it and play the core game just with your own pieces and stuff. And we actually got some, if I recall correctly, we got some feedback from that and made some minor changes based on it. So even with the heavy amounts of playtests, with multiple playtest teams over many months, you put it in front of people, and once you have like 3,000 sets of eyes on it, there's still some things that the playtester would have missed. So that's a valuable thing, But yeah, I mean, in today's world of the high competitive board game market, I think you have to have a game that's play tested a lot. Yeah. I think the days are past when you could just put up a cool idea and hope it works. You gotta have the rules honed.
I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. I see so many hobbyists that they have incredible creative ideas, just like, Sandy, and has just incredible mind. But when it comes to actually the step-by-step process to get that executed upon and to get that created, I think it's just really difficult to sort of sync all that up and to also have the motivation to do that. What kind of inspires you guys from like a motivational standpoint to continue on this and to invest a year into creating a game like that?
That is a hard question to answer. It's what motivates us. What
motivates you specifically?
Yeah, one of the things that motivates me personally, to be quite honest, are the backers. I'm very prominent in the comments on a Kickstarter, and I'm usually the person writing all the updates on Kickstarter, and I really like the community that each game creates. We have a lot of fans that follow us from game to game, which is amazing. We have kind of some of the people we see coming back from one project to the next, and we see, I recognize that handle, right? And you can kind of follow them. But there's also new people each game, because a lot of our games are very different from each other. Like I was talking about the game in January, Planet Apocalypse. That's like a very horror action tactical game, Heroes Against Demons. But we did a game this past summer called Startropolis, in which you're collectively building a space station, but you're competing to earn revenue. And it's just, there's no fighting and there's no monsters or demons, or they're very, very different games. And we kickstarted them about 6 months apart. And you could tell there was a different feel in the community and different kind of people who like the different games. Mm-hmm. I get a sense of I get a kick out of talking to them, and the enthusiasm when they see, I love this game. This game's amazing. That's when, that's what gets me, I don't know. I don't want to say that's what gets me up in the morning.
It's passionate. But it's where your passion comes from.
It is. Yeah. It's what makes me enjoy this job the most, I think, because what we're doing is, there's a lot of things in the world that need to be done. That we need to have firefighters, and we need to have teachers, which I used to do, and I love doing it for 4 years. We need to have all these things, but we need to have entertainment, and I love the fact that what I get to do is to help create something that people will enjoy with their family, And when they say in a comment, "Oh my goodness, I'm so glad that this game exists," or something like that, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, it's really bonding people together also and creating that community. And I think that's awesome. At the same time, there is the business side to creating a game. I see you guys do stuff like you'll have add-ons with your Kickstarter project where people can sort of upgrade their amount that they're pledging. From a business angle, aside from add-ons, are there any other the ways that you guys will position these games to be more profitable, or to work maybe in tandem with some of the other products you have, other games you have?
Sure. Work in tandem with other products. So you mean like crossover type of a situation?
Crossover, or I mean, I'm just kind of curious here. Also, other things you do besides add-ons to
for sure. We definitely do. I mean, there's a lot of things to do to increase the value. So the idea behind Kickstarter, of course, is that you're pledging to have this thing be created, right? And so Kickstarter creators have a strong incentive to make it, to give backers a reason to pay now for something that's going to take often more than a year to get in your hands, compared to if we live in the era of Amazon, right?
You get something Amazon Prime 2 days.
Right. Yeah. And when I buy something on Amazon, if it's through Prime especially, or fulfilled by Amazon, I'm expecting it in like 2 days, right? With free shipping, which is amazing. That's something that didn't happen 15 years ago, or 10 years ago even. But so Kickstarter is the polar opposite, right? You pay money and then you wait for a very long time. And so, we've had to be creative, and a lot of these things aren't things that we came up with. Some of them might be, but other Kickstarter creators would have had the same ideas, I'm sure. I mean, one of the biggest incentives are stretch goals. It's a situation of, hey, if there's enough backers and if there's enough money and funding level, then we'll add a new thing to your pledge, right? We'll give you more stuff, or we'll make the product just that much better that we wouldn't otherwise. Mm-hmm. We've definitely done crossovers to that as well. Our biggest property, our biggest game is Cthulhu Wars. We've done 3 Kickstarters for that one. And so some of our other games, we've done rules, like the Demon game I've referenced a few times. We've done rules for that one that you can use in Cthulhu Wars.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like you're building on your previous success there, and sort of sinking your teeth even more into that, and offering the players other ways that they can enjoy it, and sort of extend that experience.
Yeah.
One of the other things I'll see, like with board games, you'll see things like a collector's edition, or you'll see other ways you can involve the backers. For those in the audience, they're kind of thinking like, well, I have a board game I'm looking to make. That's going to be one of my rewards. What are some of the other rewards, interesting rewards you guys have come up with to offer backers aside from just like the board game?
So yeah, you bring up a collector's edition. So right now on the Kickstarter we're doing now, the Cthulhu Mythos, we actually are offering a collector's edition. So it's a book, right? And the regular book is a nice hardbound 417 page book, but there's a higher pledge level where it has a genuine leather binding. And so it's covered in leather, and it's real leather. It's not faux leather. And so that's kind of the collector's edition. And then we have an even higher level where we had 500 copies exactly of that leather collector's edition signed by Sandy. Actually, and it's not digitally signed or printed. He's hand signing those 500 books, excuse me. So that's one thing, if you have not all designers, anyone coming to Kickstarter that's starting out might not be able to offer, something that's signed, but certainly a collector's edition, a deluxe edition. That's something we've done a few times and on our current Kickstarter as well.
Are there other things like maybe variations on like miniatures or including posters or like, I'm just kind of curious some of the other stuff that is included.
Yeah,
with rewards.
Yeah, for sure. Way back in 2013, we offered like T-shirts, I think, in one project, but we don't do T-shirts and stuff like that anymore. And swag, swag is one of those things where some people like it, some people don't like it. And so the issue is if you give it to free for everybody, half the people won't care about it. And so it's like, why do something that only half the people might enjoy? So we try to think of things. One thing is we try to think of things. If it's something that's a free incentive, we want everybody to enjoy it. If it's a paid incentive like a deluxe or collector's edition, well, granted, that's going to be more expensive, and that's for those who just want that thing, right? But some of the things we've done, let's see, one of them, what I think one of the best, most creative things we did was in 2015, we had our second Cthulhu Wars Kickstarter called Cthulhu Wars Onslaught 2. So it was a reprint of our biggest game, and we added more expansions. And what we did was we had this marketing campaign before where we said, okay, if you sign up for our newsletter before the day of launch, and we made it loud and clear on our social media and in forums, we said we're launching on October 19th. On October 19th, if you have signed up for our newsletter and you back the Kickstarter, then you will get a free glow-in-the-dark Cthulhu miniature. So we have this big,
that's cool.
Yeah, and it's normally a $25 miniature. And so it's a really large, it's 180 millimeters in, I usually deal with millimeters because that's how China does things, but it's like, it's pretty tall. I mean, it's like more than 6 inches tall. It's a big, it's like a He-Man toy size thing almost, right?
And it glows in the dark.
So it's glow in the dark. Yeah, it's glow in the dark. It's green and it really glows in the dark. It's pretty cool. And so that was free or $25 if you missed this. So part of the challenge was to make sure we got a lot of people to be aware of it, right? Because if you miss out, if you don't hear about this before October 19th, you just miss out. And we didn't want people to be too upset. So we tried to like let everybody know about this. And that created the biggest first day of a Kickstarter we've ever had. It was I think $475,000 in one 24-hour period.
475,000. Geez.
Yes.
That's insane.
Oh, I could be wrong about that number. Don't fact check that.
Okay. Well, it's a big number regardless, I'm sure.
It was certainly, I know that it was our biggest first day.
Yeah.
And it was in the hundreds of thousands. It was a huge first day. And it was just, I think I can only assume it was because, and we also, of course, had thousands of people sign up. We had far more people sign up for the newsletter than have ended up backing the campaign. So it still drove people to our newsletter, which is great. And I who knows why they didn't back the campaign? Maybe they didn't want the product. Who knows? But it's still, that was our biggest gathering of people, and our newsletter has grown since then. That was 2015, but it's never grown by that amount of people in such a short amount of time.
That begs the question here. Like, why is it that you don't do that for every single project? Is it that one was just more special, or?
That is a good question. So there's a few reasons. So for one, you can't always especially on Kickstarter. So Kickstarter evolves. You can't always do the same thing. Certain things you can, right? You can always do stretch goals. Although ironically, this current project, we don't have stretch goals, but you have certain things that are kind of staples on Kickstarter, but then you have other things that I think if you did them too much, they would lose their value, you know. And we actually did do that thing I just described on the very next Kickstarter, which launched about 4 or 5 months after that one, and it also helped, but not as big. And then we decided, this was 3 years ago. It's possible that we did it on the third one, but I know after that third project, we stopped doing it. It had, after doing it the first time, it had diminishing returns. Mm-hmm. And so I think at a certain point we said, well, let's not always give away something free just for a new newsletter sign up. Because after all, we gave away something for free and all you had to do was put your email in a newsletter. Yeah. So there's not necessarily a business sense to it forever, right? That's another aspect to this.
Mm-hmm. So it's maybe something that worked 1 or 2 times, but after that, you know, people started to just not be as interested. You need to think of something more novel or something more to get them on the newsletter there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Kickstarter evolves. That's for sure.
Totally. One other question I had related to that was, okay, so for these different stretch goals, in order to offer a stretch goal, I think you have to have a lot of like pre-thought. Do you guys like plan those out, or do you just sort of think of it in the moment? Like, oh, hey, we could also offer this, or we could also offer this add-on. Like, is it very planned, or? It's
a little of both. So it's kind of, let me make an analogy of, like a comedy sketch. Your comedy sketch, you watch Saturday Night Live or something, it's scripted. They have lines, they have the jokes planned out. But occasionally there's a moment in which there's a funny line. It's like, that's got to have been ad-libbed. That's got to have been, in the moment improv because that comedian was sharp. Right. And I think stretch goals are like that. You got to plan it out. You got to say, this is what we're doing because this is how it will work. We know it will work this way. But sometimes in the middle of a Kickstarter, and I give you some good examples, we think of something that people will love and then we do it during the Kickstarter. So getting back to the planning, you got to plan it out, because if you don't plan out your stretch goals, you'll be killed financially. You just will not be able to afford it. Because think of this. So when someone, let's say and I'm talking of the classic stretch goal, which is a free new thing to all backers. So let's say you have a board game that costs $100, right? A $100 board game. It's a big box game. And you have the manufacturing price. There's some percentage of that. And that's what you can afford to pay China or the factory, wherever it is. But then you cross the $200,000 mark and you add some miniatures and that increases the cost. Then you add the $300,000 mark, 400, right? So there's more and more backers and the funding keeps going up. Well, every backer is only paying the same $100. But what our cost per unit keeps rising.
So your profit margins get eaten too.
Right. So the margins shrink. And at a certain point, you can theoretically have a crossover in which you're actually offering so much stuff that even if the campaign has broken $1 million in funding, well, now my costs to China are $600,000 or $700,000. Now Kickstarter takes 10%. Now I have to pay my employees. And at a certain point, you're like, I lost money on this, right?
Yeah. It can get a hairy situation.
That's right. Yeah. And you have to plan it out, and you basically have to say, okay, we have 20 or 30 stretch goals we can add. Let's assume they're all met. What is that per unit cost? And then when we have that, we then say, here's the price of the game. And so as a creator, it sounds bad to say that, because now it's like, okay, so what you're doing is you're saying that I can afford to make this at this price, and then you're taking stuff out and then putting it back in when you reach the stretch goal. And it seems kind of like a farce, and it kind of is. The thing about stretch goals is they are kind of a farce, because if you really just gave away stuff for free, you can't make it. And so you have to plan it out. But at the same time, they drive enthusiasm, they drive backers to the project, and a lot of
it makes it fun too.
Yeah, it's fun. It's totally fun, and I won't discount the fun. But because it has to be financially planned out, it means that it's not entirely you know,
Organic,
you can't, it's not really a free lunch, right? There is no such thing as a free lunch. We couldn't survive as a company if we were actually giving away stuff for free, right? We have to plan it out. But at the same time, I mean, there's margins, right? We can shrink the margin because the backers we have so many backers and it's such a success. We've always been willing to just say, okay, we'll accept less money for a game. Per game, right? And so for the on the spot things, as an example, we actually had so this game that we did in January, Planet Apocalypse, this demon-based game, what happened was we had all these stretch goals. We planned them out. We hit them all. And it was towards the end of the campaign. And there were still people adding to the project. And we were like, man, we don't want to just like end it here because there was still room for it to grow. And we wanted to kind of give a thank you to our backers, right? And so what we did was Sandy just thought of, okay, this is a game. It's based on demons. And he way back when was involved. He was an employee at id Software and did a lot of the levels for the original Doom and Doom 2 video games. So he basically said, okay, let's take a cue from that and let's do the famous Spider Mastermind. And so kind of in the middle of the Kickstarter, he told the artist, hey, draw a sketch for Spider Mastermind. And so we didn't have a sculpt ready. We just had a sketch and we showed it to backers and said, hey, if you hit this funding, then we are going to give you this as well. But it's not planned out. So we're going to try to make sure it doesn't move the deadline or move the schedule back. And it didn't. We ended up getting a sculpt done. We got our best sculptor who's also pretty fast to do it. And if I recall correctly, he began during the Kickstarter, but the sculpt wasn't finished till like 3 or 4 weeks after the Kickstarter was done.
Yeah, that's a really creative way of approaching that. And I also think it's really interesting, sort of the way that you combine being a bit more organic like that, but also being very sound on the financial sense. I think that's a hallmark of having a successful campaign, is knowing your numbers. So thank you for sharing that. I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign, or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at backerkit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount. Well, this has been tons of great information. You know, we're coming to the end of the interview here. I did have one final question for you though, and I think that's because Sandy came on and he's incredible. You know, like you said, he's a legend. I think you have a very different perspective here in that you're sort of the one who's coordinating all of this, and you're all making sure that everyone is hitting their deadlines, everyone's doing everything that's required. It's sort of the backbone there. I'd be curious to know, what is that you've learned most about yourself from having made this career change from being an English teacher to now being the head or being the production manager at this company?
Well, that is a big question.
Deep question, man.
Yeah, that's deep. Man, I don't know. Let me think for a second.
It could also be about crowdfunding it's not about you.
There's been a lot of challenges. And because one thing is that I don't have a background in production management or personnel management. My background was in teaching English. Now I did draw from that of, you have to corral students, you have a thing in teaching that's called classroom management, right? You have to make sure your students are on task and you have to make sure they're not talking to each other and passing notes and whatnot. But the people my team, people I work with aren't really students. But so there's an element, I guess,
having to rally people around a vision.
Yeah. Well, you could say that. So when I was first brought on, one of the reasons I think Sandy wanted me to come on is because I am detail oriented And I do kind of tend to try to see the bigger picture on things and how things will fit together. And at the time, I think Sandy just knew that the team was disorganized, didn't have a tight schedule on what was going on. And our first Kickstarter was very delayed. We've had a lot of delays actually, but our first Kickstarter was extremely delayed, and we didn't get it to our backers in time. And I think a lot of
his realization.
Just like making it happen, because if it doesn't happen, like the backers will never get it.
It affects your reputation too.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that answer was really vague. I'm not sure what I've learned the most. I think I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And so, every new project is a new challenge. And so there's not, I would really have to think about that. I'm not sure.
One of the things I would just say that I took away from this interview is that I think every entrepreneur or every business person has to surround themselves with people that are different from themselves in good ways, that have different skills that are different from them, and that also have a different mindset. And, whether it's attention to detail or way of doing things, it really leads to a product that they couldn't, an experience for the backers that they couldn't have created just alone if they were to try and handle it all themselves. So that's one thing I took away from that.
That is 100% for sure. So I don't want to talk too much about the Peterson Games team history, but we are in what I like to call Peterson Games 4.0, right? So we've had four
Constant
iterations of teams. Yeah, and of course Sandy's a constant. He's the owner. I've been around since after only a year. In mid 2014, it started in mid 2013. So I've been around since close to the beginning. But we've had so many different teams. We've had a team, and then almost everybody. And it wasn't like everybody left and a new group came in. There's transition periods, but there's kind of in our history, there's kind of like a team 1, team 2, team 3, and now we're on team 4, in which everybody at the company right now is except for me, Lincoln, and Sandy. We three are the only ones who have been around longer than last November. Like, we have a completely new team this year within just the last year, last 11 months. And this 4.0 Peterson Games team, for example, is the best team we've ever had. And I think so part of learning, to go back to what you said of different people bringing different things to the table, that's for sure. But it's also having the right people on your team. There's a lot of stuff that goes into, like you said, getting the Kickstarter to people's doorstep. And a lot of it is,
behind the scenes.
A lot of it is tricky to figure out, and it's you think it's not. You think it's simple, and it's actually, we're publishing an entire board game and all that goes with that, with a crowdfunding campaign, which is a unique marketing tool and funding tool, for a business, and all of the angles and perspectives of handling all of that. It takes a lot of people, and a lot of people doing their job, and a lot of people, they're doing their job right, and we've gone through different people that they're great in they have great skills, they can do lots of things, but they weren't right for our team.
The right thing,
they weren't right for us, and they were right for some other company.
Well said. Well, Arthur, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing all this great information, also being super transparent and honest. I think a lot of this stuff, particularly talking about stretch goals, those are things that just a lot of creators don't realize, and they end up being maybe too organic and then going into the red and actually owing money because they didn't do their calculations right. So I really appreciate you coming on and giving us a glimpse of sort of what's happening behind the scenes at Peterson Games, all of the incredible success that you've had. For those listening, you want to go and check it out. It's petersongames.com. Also, at the time we're recording this, they have their ongoing Kickstarter campaign. You can look them up. They have a lot of great projects out there. And you can also join their newsletter there, and you can learn more about some of the projects they have in store. Thank you so much for coming on, Arthur. Look forward to watching your progress, and maybe we'll have to have you back.
All right. Thank you so much, Salvador. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Hope you've enjoyed this podcast episode. You learned a ton about creating a board game, also behind the scenes of managing an effective team. How do you actually set out a timeline to create one of these things? I hope you got a lot of valuable information and advice out of today's episode. I usually will try to have on successful entrepreneurs just like this, people who are currently raising money with crowdfunding on Kickstarter, etc. I have a great announcement for you, but before we get into that, I also just want to ask you, how have you been liking today's episode? How have you been liking the podcast? Would love it if you could take a second to leave a rating or review on iTunes. That would mean the world to me. It's always great to see some of the comments I get there, some of the constructive feedback, all that kind of stuff. You can leave a review on your smartphone if you're listening to this there, and I also have this on Spotify, on YouTube, on my blog. There are a lot of places where you can leave a review, but one on iTunes would mean a lot to me. That being said, what I wanted to do sort of when I was first getting started was to introduce people to these new tactics and strategies and resources and ways to actually fund a Kickstarter campaign. How do you actually do this? How do you do the things that are working? How do you make it so that people are instantly funding you? How do you make it so that people will actually pay attention to what you have to say and decide to back your Kickstarter project? And a lot of thinking has led to me creating other stuff. Like I have books. I have the book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. I have an Audible version of that, a paperback, ebook. But one of the consistent things was a lot of my readers were saying, hey, Sal, that's awesome, but like, do you have a companion course, or do you have some other way that I can also continue to learn this information? I'm not always able to read. Can you put together some training videos, all that kind of stuff? So I was kind of like mulling that over, and what I put together for you is called the Kickstarter Launch Formula, and it's on Udemy. So Udemy is a great training platform. You can discover a bunch of great courses on there. They're pretty affordable. So what I did was I put together a curriculum format for the Kickstarter Launch Formula, put that on Udemy, and also I have some exclusive training videos that I haven't shared anywhere else that go into the decision mechanisms behind someone actually deciding to support your campaign, to become a backer, to actually join your project. This is really the secret way, if you will, to get someone to back your campaign on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and I reveal all of that in this course. I also go through other things like a checklist of things you have to do and different action items. I go through the downloadable MP3s that you can download to your iPhone, you can download to your Android device, and you can listen to this course on the go if you're not in front of your computer and you can't listen to or watch Udemy. Other stuff, going just through the entire launch process of a campaign step by step. So I think you're gonna like this. If you want to check it out, I'm gonna give you a special promo link which will unlock a massive discount for this course on Udemy. You can go to crowdcrux.com/Udemy promo. That is crowdcrux.com/Udemy promo. And when you go through that link, you're gonna unlock that discount. You can become a member of this course. And also there are ways that I detail in the course that you can work with me. If you want to hire me as a personal coach, you want to have a one-on-one coaching session, there are ways you can do that. And also you can learn more about some of the other programs that I offer. So this is a really good starting point. If you're looking for something affordable, you're looking to get started now, and you're looking to really learn from the best that are out there. I hope you enjoy it. Again, crowdcrux.com/Udemy promo. I also hope that you enjoyed today's podcast episode. I will see you next week.